My name is Heidi McCutcheon. I'm the Executive Director of the Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is the oldest and largest business organization in Mason County, established in 1922. Currently, we have nearly 400 businesses and represent about 6,000 employees across Mason County. It's my pleasure to be your host tonight, along with John Lester. He served as our 2017 President of the Chamber Board, and he's the General Manager of the Shelton Mason County Journal.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you to each of our candidates. Your willingness to serve our community through public office is no easy task. We appreciate your commitment to the City of Shelton. We look forward to hearing from you tonight as we look towards the future. Tonight's event is being live streamed and recorded thanks to our partners at Hood Canal Communications and MasonWebTV. I'd also like to have the members of the Chamber's Government Relation Committee and Chamber Board members please stand for acknowledgement for their help in putting together tonight's event. Before we get to our candidates, I invite you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight we're happy to bring to you the candidates for Shelton City Council. As you likely know, there are 4 seats open. Originally there was 15 candidates vying for those seats. Tonight we've invited the 2 candidates for each seat made it to the general election to tonight's forum and asked each of them to prepare questions of his or her opponent. We will also accept questions from the audience here tonight. Those will be asked time permitting. In the back table over there, you'll see a black box. There are a script there that you can write your questions. If you do have questions, we ask that you address those to both candidates for any particular seat. You can choose which seat you would like those questions to go to, or you can leave it open to be asked of any of the candidates.
We'll begin with seat 4. We did not receive a response to the invitation we extended to Jason Coots, nor did we receive any questions of his opponent. Because of this, we've asked Eric Anisco to share his opening statement with you tonight, and we will not be asking any questions of him. Eric, when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Eric Anisco. I'm running for City of Shelton, Council seat number 4. I want to thank everybody that came tonight. I also want to thank Chamber for their second forum, and also the other 3 forums that we had with the League of Women Voters, and Shelton Mason County Journal, and iFiber News. Also, did I say MasonWebTV? I did. And I want to just thank everybody for coming tonight. It's been a very interesting election season, and I hope that you guys will think of me when you go to the election booth. Sorry, I'm nervous. I've attended many of the meetings. I know a lot of the issues. I think we can do better. And I also want to thank all the candidates here tonight: Marilyn Vogler, Joe Schmidt, Tracy Moore. I'm blind. Oh, Bailey Zurich. And was that it? Oh, Bob Rogers. Thank you for running for this election, and also thank you for running a clean election. And I hope to see everybody at the voter booth. Thank you. Oh, Deidre. Oh, I'm sorry. Where's Deidre? There she is. Thank you, Deidre.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
For the remainder of the evening, our format will include hearing from both candidates for the 3 remaining seats. We'll hear an opening statement from each, then both will be asked 2 questions prepared by the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee and one that we've received previously from the audience.
For these questions, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the questions. Whomever goes first will also be given 30 seconds to respond to his or her opponent. We'll ask the candidates the questions and preparing by their opponents. The candidates asking the questions will have 30 seconds to respond, to clarify the question, and the opponent will be given a final 30 seconds to answer.
Lisa Perry, the chair of our Government Affairs Committee, is here in the front. She'll be signaling to you when you have 15 seconds left and when your time is up. To make sure that we stick to our agenda and get you out of here on time, the time limits will be strictly adhered to. And with that, we'll get things started.
As this is now our third public forum since the primary election, we decided to change things up. So beginning with seat 7 and working our way back. So we'll begin with Bob Rogers and Tracy Moore first. Tracy, we'll begin with you.
Okay, did you want us to stand to answer the questions or?
However you would like to do.
Okay, I think I'll sit. I'm Tracy Moore. I've been here before. You all know me. I have lived in Shelton for 30 years, and for 30 years I have been extremely busy in our community as a volunteer and as an activist. I started off on the school district, on planning commissions. A million years ago, we had Old Town Shelton, and we're a Main Street community. I've been on chamber committees, and I was a pioneer in historic preservation in our city. And then I became a pioneer in changing our city government. And so I'm mostly thankful so much to our citizens who had the foresight and the determination and the vision to change our form of government from a 3-member commission to a 7-member council, which will give us all better representation and more voices to make those important decisions for our city. So I have been a part of the old government and the old way of doing things, and now I'm that agent of change and looking forward to a new and better way of doing things. I promise that I'll be realistic and truthful. I think I've proven that I can be that. My goal will always be to make decisions that are the best for our entire community, look at our community as a whole, and work to protect the investments that we all make in our community. Thank you so much. Tracy Moore, position 7.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob, your opening statement, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Rogers. We're for position 7. Before I get into what I feel the council position should entail, I'm going to describe a little bit about myself for those who haven't heard me before. I've been a forester, accountant, and a manager for lately with Green Diamond, just retired. A lot of experience in finance, operations, and analysis of data. My decision to run was really based on 3 factors. One is we moved here 30 years ago, decided to move to Shelton. A couple months ago, we decided to stay in Shelton for retirement, and I just love the community. I also felt that my skills would be useful in the current environment in the city, and I felt that the environment down at the City Commission in the last few years has just become a little overwhelming for people to participate, and I just felt I could change that. The City Council, we focused on several things which I think fit my skills. One is looking at priorities, which in most organizations is formatted in the budget. I've had many years both responsibility for a budget and also developing an enterprise-wide budget for Green Diamond. I'd like to have the City Council be accountable, and one of the big jobs of the City Council will be hiring a city manager and making that position accountable to the council and accountable to the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Now we'll begin with the questions that we prepared for you. For this, we'll begin with Bob Rogers. After Bob, Tracy will also answer. After Tracy's answer, Bob, you'll have the opportunity to respond if you'd like.
Okay.
So, Bob, in 90 seconds, please tell us, if you are elected, what will be your priorities for the first 100 days in office? Please be specific.
Okay. First 100 days, thank you, Heidi. I guess I look at two prongs. One is things that the council can completely control, and the second prong is things that we may not be completely control. And I'll address the things that we can completely control first in the 100 days. One is to create a team. And I think whether we disagree or agree on issues, the city council must be respectful of each other, and we must form a team that comes up with solutions for problems, even if we don't agree. And moving forward, that council will address those as a team. And even if I don't agree with the position, it's my job to support it. The other thing is we haven't had a financial statement, audit financial statement in 2 years. I think there's some, due to financial turnover, there's some issues with just where we're sitting financially, and I think that would be the first thing I would probably dive into and have the council dive into with coordination with the department heads, and maybe by then the city manager within 100 days. I'm not sure that's possible. The next priority would just be knowing the city team. I know some city workers, but I don't know a lot, and I think we've got a bunch of new council faces potentially, and I think that would be really critical that the council gets to know the department heads and all the team at the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Tracy Moore, you'll also have 90 seconds to share with us, if you are elected, what will be your priorities for the first 100 days in office? Again, please be specific.
Okay, I guess if Bob can stand up, I can stand up too. The first 100 days in office will be definitely getting to know the other councilors, identifying our goals, identifying what is important to each of us so that we can work more proactively on decisions that will have to be made, and coming up to speed with things that have happened in the past. Within the first 100 days, I would also like to take a look at the study that we will have for the economic development study. I'm very intrigued by that and want to get moving on that, jumpstart that. I also believe that we will probably be very, very busy in selecting the new city manager. That will be an extremely important decision that will be made by all of us, and I anticipate that that will be grounds for a lot of discussion, a lot of identifying what our priorities are in that person, and then helping that person get on speed. It will be a challenge because we will have a new council with many people who've never been in office before, and we will have a new person who may or may not be familiar with Shelton. It will be an opportunity to reframe how we do business, how we promote ourselves, and how we prioritize the things that we want to accomplish in Shelton. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, if you'd like to respond, you have 30 seconds to do so.
I'll just do a short response. City manager is a top priority, and didn't forget that. The issue is that we need to develop ties with our current staff and figure out where we are before we move ahead, and hiring a city manager is critical to that, so I agree with that. Thanks.
This question will be fielded by Tracy Moore first. Tracy, you'll be given 90 seconds to answer. What is your position on the upcoming 41.9% utility tax on solid waste? Please be specific to the tax, not to the decision to privatize solid waste.
Okay, I was on the commission when the decision was made to privatize our solid waste department. I felt that it was contrary to what I believed. I'm concerned now with the 41% tax because it seems like we make it a huge priority and we spend a lot of time discussing how we can possibly lower utility fees for our citizens, for our customers. And I believe that we need to really look at that tax as an easy way and a quick way and a fairly normal way of knocking down some utility bills. It may not be a huge amount, but I believe that we could cut $6 to $8 a month off of our solid waste department bills, and that would maybe do more to help the pocketbooks of our citizens than if we were to freeze our sewer rates, continue freezing the other utility rates for $1 or $2 a month. So that, I don't think that the 41% tax was fully explained, and I don't believe that there was adequate time given in discussion before that decision was made. So I would very much like to revisit that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob Rogers, in 90 seconds, please tell us your position on the upcoming 41.9% utility tax for solid waste. And again, please be specific to the tax, not the decision to privatize solid waste.
Thanks, John. This is an issue that I think kind of reflects some of my concerns with not only the current commission, past commissions, is a proposal comes before it and there's not either enough time or enough interest to study it completely. The 41% tax was instituted when we went to Mason County Garbage, and basically it was to account for indirect costs and things that the city had been charging itself when the city had it. And my whole question on this is not the tax, it's the transparency on how those funds went back to the city. There wasn't hardly any discussion about whether those should go to maybe another policeman, somehow use them for other purposes. And I think that's the whole issue with that tax. It was kind of done, it was completed behind the scenes. It's been revised 3 or 4 times because it constantly changes, or it needs to be changed because it wasn't done correctly in the first place. And I think the whole transparency issue with that is my biggest concern, and I would relook at that. That is now general fund money coming in to the city as a utility tax, and we need to understand how best to use that tax for the benefit of all citizens.
Thank you, Bob. Tracy, would you like to respond? You have 30 seconds.
I would just like to reiterate the point that I was against this whole deal, and that I had questions that were never answered throughout the process. So I do firmly believe that we need to look at that. We need an accountability. It's just a little too easy to collect all that money from our citizens without a stated goal, a stated purpose, and an explanation of how that number was reached.
Thank you, Tracy.
Bob, we'll ask this question of you first. In 90 seconds, please tell us, of the first decisions, one of the first decisions that the City Council will make is that of hiring a new city manager. Please explain your ideas on how this process may move forward and how your experience has prepared you for that.
Okay. My understanding is we've hired an outside consulting firm to do my terminology is a headhunt. I know that's not very nice sounding. I think moving forward, I think everyone has to be involved. I assume that the consultant will come back with a list of potential candidates. The process should include definitely involvement of the council, also the involvement of the department heads that are going to have to work for this person, and eventually the public. And I think the public involvement may be more towards the end, because it's probably going to be very difficult to get people involved in the first screening of 3 to 6 candidates, I'm assuming. My experience with private industry is similar. Usually for a high position, you put out a call either through a headhunter or a recruiter, and you get 5 or 6 candidates back who are interested or may not be interested but are highly capable. And then the city council needs to prioritize what they're looking for in that city manager. And I think, some of the things we need to have priorities on are the current status of the city. It's got to be someone who's, I think, managed the city before, maybe not our size, but someone who has that experience, the whole background of finance, operations, public works. I think that's the type of person we need. Moving forward, I would think that we'd have the council would make the recommendation, and then hopefully we'd have some type of open house with the public. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Now we'll hear from Tracy Moore. You'll also have 90 seconds to share with us. Oh, I'm sorry, I totally missed that. One of the first decisions for the City Council is to hire a new city manager. Please explain how you see this process moving forward and how your experience has prepared you for that.
I have been part of the process for hiring a city manager 4 different times. First is my role as a citizen activist many years ago. And then when Dave O'Leary was hired, I worked for the city and I was on part of the staff interview team for that. And then most recently when Ryan was hired. And I will say that I completely believe that we need to start with a list of qualities that we desire in a person in order for the hiring firm to identify what Shelton's needs are and what our desires are. There may be some disagreements and some differences of opinion from the council, but we have to all look at what we need and what we want. I agree that experience is very important, but I also agree that we have to, as this new beginning in our city, we have to break out of the mold and maybe look for innovation as well. I believe that Ryan was a good choice. I believe that maybe he was at a disadvantage because of his inexperience. And I also believe that he did some good things and we should build on the movement that was started. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, if you'd like to respond, you have 30 seconds to do so.
Nothing really to add. I just, we need to hire a person fully vetted, someone who's willing to do the work, someone who'll work as a team member, both with the council and the department heads. And I think that's, just like with the council, I think moving the city ahead, all this group, council and especially the city manager, need to work as a team and be compatible, if not agreeable, but compatible.
Thank you, Bob. Well, now we'll move into the questions that the candidates have prepared for one another. The first question has been prepared by Tracy for Bob. Bob, you'll have 90 seconds to answer. Tracy's first question to you is, you have stated you agree with the reduced development fees. What will you use as a measure to determine when it is time to re-examine the rates?
Thanks, Tracy. Yes, I have agreed with the past commission reducing fees. That was done in 2017, excuse me. The main purpose for that, I think at that point, you know, everything's hindsight. At that point, we were having no building in the city. And the city commission decided that to kickstart something, to try something different, they reduced the fees. And due to that, potentially, due to SPI hiring significantly during that time, during the national economy improving, building increased in the city. And in our neighborhood, we had 3 infills in the last year and a half. So in my eyes, it worked. Now, did we take in as much permit fees during that time? No. We also didn't lose money. We had fees coming in that we may not have had come in at all. Again, it's anyone's guess. What determines that? I think we need to really look at our costs of permits and what the city charges for those. We should have a cost recovery at the maximum. That's all it should be. And we need to relook at that. We need to look at the indirect costs that are allocated to the building department from finance and other areas, and make sure we know what that minimum fee is that we can cost recover on. And then from that, we can decide, depending on the economy, whether we want to actually increase that or decrease that. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Tracy, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond, if you'd like.
Oh, I wasn't aware that we could do this. I guess my other question that didn't come through on that, so I don't expect Bob to answer it at this point, but my position is that that needs to be done sooner than later. We haven't received true numbers on what the actual costs of the potential benefit to our city, and we should be charging what it costs our city. The most recent numbers I was given is that we're looking at a potential need to subsidize by $350,000 rather than the $15,000 that's
Tracy.
been reported. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
I'll just say the point that was made is exactly the issue that I have, and that's sometimes we do not know our true costs. We have indirect costs coming back and forth. Solid waste was a good example. There's $300,000 charged to solid waste for indirect costs, whether that was real or not. And I know the city, I think this year, or at least is hoping to do an indirect cost, revise their indirect cost model. And we need to know what those costs are. And at this point, I'm not sure we have a really hard handle on what those costs are.
Thank you, Bob.
Tracy, here's the first question that Bob has prepared for you. You'll have 90 seconds to respond. Bob's question is, do you believe the city's debt is too high? If so, what can be done to lower it? If not, what do you believe the maximum debt limit is and why?
Of course it's too high. Any debt is too high. What I owe in my house is too high. I would rather it wasn't there. But the way that we take care of that and the way that we are responsible is to make our payments on time, to make the payments that we have agreed on, and to look for ways that if we have a windfall, we may want to at some point choose to pay down our debt with that windfall. It does not help our city to not pay our bills. We need to be sure that we keep our credit rating as an A rating. We don't want to borrow money, but we have to be able to do that if there is a need for that. So we hire people to do the rate studies, and we do base our rates on what the cost of the service is and the cost that we agree for putting in the bucket for emergency funds or the reserves, and also to pay for future improvements and for maintenance to our utilities. It's extremely important that we look at it realistically, that we don't falsely lower our rates in order to make the people happy for a season and then be faced with raising our rates astronomically in the future.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob, if you would like to clarify or respond, you have 30 seconds to do so.
I'll just clarify a couple points why I asked the question. One is, I don't view the debt as any reason, or the amount of the debt as due to our bond rating. You look at other cities, and their debt is significantly lower. It's lower on a percentage of their assessed value, and I think we need to really look at trying to reduce operating costs so we can use some of those funds to reduce debt to lower all our fees and all our utility rates.
Thank you, Bob. Tracy, would you like to respond again?
I agree that we need to be as efficient as possible, but I will not consider overworking our staff in order to pay down our debt such a minute amount of money that it wouldn't really in the long range make a difference. I believe we need to follow with what we've agreed.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob, here's the next question Tracy has prepared for you. You have 90 seconds and then 30 seconds, same. You have stated your discomfort with the tenor of the past commission. If you would have been on the commission, what would you have done differently? You have 90 seconds.
I'll make a real easy answer. I would not be on Facebook. That's not and that's serious also. I've been in organizations where we have fairly heated discussions about long-term management of forest ground. Anybody that knows forester knows how their heart is in the ground. and we have to come to decisions. And when you come out meeting, you don't go on Facebook, you don't go to the bar and badmouth your boss or badmouth the owners of the company. And that's what I bring. And I think that's what I would have brought to the commission. There's no reason to respectfully disagree is correct. To bicker, to call personal names, to assume you know what the reason is they're voting the way they are, that's not appropriate. And that's what I would change. And I can't say I could change that for other council members. All I can say is that's what I would change because that's who I am.
Thank you, Bob. Tracy, you have 30 seconds to clarify your response.
Okay, I guess my question was more about what actually happened within the commission meetings. And I would be the first to admit that sometimes it wasn't real pleasant in there. But frankly, I guess I would be interested if there was a different way of handling the exchanges within the commission meetings. I agree that maybe some things were said in Facebook, but I was talking more about the actual meetings and the public personification of our city.
Thank you. Bob, would you like to respond, please?
Again, I'll just say what I've said. I've been in meetings, they weren't public meetings, but it's the same demeanor. You treat your fellow commissioners, you treat the public, you treat department heads with respect. That doesn't mean you agree. That doesn't mean a department head comes up and you call him up and say, I don't believe those numbers. Can you show me where those are? But to call out that person personally, I think as long as we focus on issues and not being in all those meetings, I can't say what could have been changed. I'm just saying what I think can change. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tracy, the next question Bob's prepared for you is, during the solid waste business debate, you mentioned using franchise fees as a way to equalize rates with the private competitor if the city were to expand into commercial waste market. Do you believe that this is an appropriate use of franchise fees or other government charges? Why or why not? You have 90 seconds for your answer.
After I made the statement about franchise fees, I came to educate myself more on franchise fees, and I probably would rethink that more and look at it individually as to what type of franchise. I definitely believe that some are in order. I don't know if I believe that that was appropriate in that case anymore, and that is an instance where I took it upon myself to further educate myself, and I believe that we need to do that in all circumstances to really look at issues from all sides, to take the responsibility to become as educated as we possibly can, and to be willing to change our position if we are convinced otherwise.
Bob, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond if you'd like to.
No, I just like to say appreciate that response because when I was watching, I didn't attend that meeting. I was watching. I don't think I attended that meeting. I was kind of taken aback by a public official using the power of government taxation to harm a private business who was in the business already, and the city was going to move into their, basically look to take their business. So I appreciate that answer.
Thank you. Tracy, you also have 30 seconds if you'd like to respond or clarify.
Okay, well, I guess I appreciate that response too. And I would once again say that I do believe there are cases where we should indeed be collecting franchise fees where maybe we have not, but it would be in the realm of more of a public entity rather than a private entity. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob, the last question Tracy's prepared for you is, climate change is a hotly debated topic. Do you believe that our local government should play a role in combating climate change? If so, what role should that be? If not, then why? You have 90 seconds to answer.
I guess I'll answer that question not regarding climate change, but being good stewards of this earth. This community is blessed to be in an area that has a net probably production of oxygen. It is an area that uses that product, I'm calling about forest products, which I'm in love with, I'll be first to admit, to create affordable housing for people. It consumes carbon dioxide. So right there, as a local, we can't do much about the environment as far as forestry, but we can support local businesses that are fully green, not fake green, but fully green. We can also support a local economy. The biggest carbon pollution in Washington State is from automobiles, transportation, to improve the economy locally so we don't have half our people driving to Olympia or driving to Kitsap for jobs to support their family. And that would be critical in if I'm elected, to work with the EDC and the county, and also hopefully the economic development plan the city is working on will address that. The other issues that we can control are small. Those are the two big ones, to support industries that are already green, not directly, but just encourage them, and also to directly reduce the carbon footprint of our transportation here in Shelton by keeping jobs at home.
Thank you, Bob. Tracy, you have 30 seconds.
I guess I would like to add to that I believe wholeheartedly that we need to be aware of the changing climate and the potential effects it may have on our downtown area, specifically making sure that we make decisions on zoning and development and keep in mind the flood zone, also the slide areas that we have.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob, you have 30 seconds if you would like.
I'm good.
Right? Thank you very much.
Tracy, the last question Bob has for you is, one of the major responsibilities of the council is to set priorities with the new city manager and to review and approve the city budget. Please describe your preferred budgeting technique and how you have developed budgets in the past. You have 90 seconds for your answer.
Okay, that's kind of an interesting question because I've been a part of many different types of budgeting in the past. I was the bookkeeper office manager at United Way, which was a complete different type of budgeting, but was very important in that we were audited each and every year, and there was an extreme effort to make sure that there was nothing found in our audits. It was important to keep our status as a national United Way. So there was that. I was on the budget committee for Mason Transit last year, and I'm learning. Budget is not, and finance is not my first skill, but I have done everything I can to learn how to prioritize, how to manage a budget, how to read a budget and make sure that it balances. Also, how to do the budget after the fact, the amendments to a budget. So it's been a learning experience for me. I'm continuing to learn, and I don't pretend that I know everything, but in the process of my work life, I have definitely come into contact with that and worked closely with accountants.
Thank you, Tracy. Bob, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond if you'd like.
Just point of clarification, I guess I was thinking that the technique that I've been used to, and I think we can bring this city, is it's not true zero base, but it's close to zero base, and that way you plan your activities and you budget back from those. You do not take last year's budget or the history of budgets and add 5% or whatever your cost of living is. And I think that's what I'm going to stress, and at the city is review the budget procedures and don't just continue to do what you've done in the past. Think outside the box and try to budget things a little differently.
Thank you. Tracy, you have another 30 seconds if you have anything more to add.
Okay, and as you may or may not know that in the recent years at the city, we have completely revamped the type of budgeting and accounting that we do. So once again, that is something that I've had to stay on top of, continue learning, make that effort to learn, and it's a skill that I've developed, and I know there is room for improvement, but I am up for that task.
Great, thank you. And thank you to both of you for fielding these questions from the chamber, from the audience, and from one another. We'll now begin with closing statements, and you'll each have 60 seconds. As Bob began with his opening statement, we'll hear first from Tracy Moore this time. Tracy.
Ooh, just really shaking it up. Okay, my goal as a council member will be to continue the work that I've started and to continue to be independent, to continue to be innovative, to continue to be enthusiastic about our city, about our potential, about the things that we can do. We have to promote our city as a positive place with full potential. And we have people moving here because of its potential, and they are embracing this. We have to look forward, not continue to do things as we have in the past, not continue to think of ourselves as a city that needs to cater only to the lower income, but to also make it a place that we can balance it out with affordable housing for each and every income level. And that's the way that we will grow and be a vigorous city that appeals to all. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll finish things up with Bob Rogers.
I just first like to thank the chamber for hosting this. And like Eric, I'm not going to name all because I only have 60 seconds, but all the candidates that came forward in December, I think there was talk that there wouldn't be enough candidates to fill the 4 slots, and that was just something to see in the city, and I was very proud of our city and all the people who stepped forward. I've been doorbelling, excuse me, attending forums and talking to people, and it's just reinforced the 3 themes of my campaign. That's being open, being practical, and be accountable. And I think people are looking for the city council to be open on all issues, and that's just not public meeting laws and things like that, but being open on things we're voting on, so we know what's going on, so we can communicate with the citizens what's going on. They also want the council to be accountable, and that's accountable just for projects, but also personal accountable to individual voters, to individual citizens at a personal level. So please consider me for position 7. Thank you.
We appreciate both of you sharing your views and your platforms with us this evening. Thank you again. We'll now have a 5-minute break as we prepare for the stage for Bailey Cyrick and Joe Smith. Thanks. Thanks, Tracy.
Sure.
We're going to get started in just a minute here. If you'd like to go ahead and take your seats, and just to move things along.
Good job, John.
Thank you and welcome back. Just so for some clarification and technical reasons wise, the candidates have been asked just to go ahead and sit. So they want to stand and do other stuff, but we're playing crazy with our technology over here. So we're gonna ask candidates to sit, please. So we're happy to bring back Bailey Cyrek and Joe Schmidt to share their platforms with you. Bailey, you will have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
All right, hello, my name is Bailey Cyrek. I'm a recent graduate from WSU. I graduated with a BA in political science, emphasis on pre-law. I moved back to Shelton after I graduated because this is where my family is, and this is where my friends are, and this is where I want to eventually start my own family. So this is our third forum in the general election, so I'm sure by now most of you know our qualifications. I have a college education and a small business background. But what I think is important to remember in this election, nobody is going to know every single detail to every single problem in the city. We have a really big opportunity to vote in 4 new people. We need to elect in people who are open to listening and learning, not someone that thinks that they already know the answers to our city's problems. I'm honest, genuine, and I'm upfront. My morals are very important to me, and because of that, I will never be a puppet to anybody. I will continue to speak to citizens, business owners, and elected officials to explore all avenues and ideas. The decisions I make during my time in office will be based off of 2 things. 1, having a clear understanding of the proposed idea, and 2, the effects on citizens and business owners. I have Shelton's best interest at heart. Like I said, I'm an upfront person. What you see now is what you'll be voting for and what you'll get if I win. This is exactly what Shelton needs right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. Joe, you have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Thank you. For the past 15 years, I've been serving the public. I'm a military veteran, a volunteer firefighter, and a state employee. I grew up in a small business family. I know what it means when work is slow. I know how it feels to answer the phone late at night on weekends and holidays. While I didn't follow in my father's footsteps, I followed his moral direction. I set off on my own to serve my country and later the people of our city and the state of Washington. I have managed complex projects and worked hard to build lasting partnerships. I have challenged the status quo through creativity and innovation. I know what it's like to work under pressure to put someone else's life ahead of my own. The role of our city council is to set a clear vision by integrating the voices of the residents and the business community. That vision can only be brought into focus by a team of people and not one person alone. The characteristics of those who will hold this office must demonstrate the highest levels of integrity, accountability, and service leadership. I believe it is the combination of my moral character, professional abilities, and experience which make me the ideal candidate for our city council. I hope this evening that I become your clear choice. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm running for Shelton City Council, position 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
With that, we'll begin with the questions that we prepared for both of you, and we'll begin this with Joe Schmidt. After Joe, Bailey will also answer, and after Bailey's answer, Joe will have the opportunity to respond. Joe, in 90 seconds, please tell us, what have you done to prepare for this position? Please include things such as speaking to city staff, citizen advisory boards, etc.
Yeah, exactly that. Initially, when I filed to run for the position, my first act was to get smart on all the issues, what's working well, what's not working well, and to start networking and increase my knowledge base with the folks who make the city go round, and that be the business community, the Economic Development Council, the Chamber of Commerce, city staff, Public Works. I rode along with a patrol with the city police department, and they were gracious to kind of show me the ins and outs of what their day is like. I met with the fire chief, and I spent a lot of time just researching through data. I combed through the past 5 years worth of permit data. I combed through the financials, and I started to try to make heads or tails of the gaps and where things are in the city. It's my analytical sense. It's how I do my day-to-day job. I wanted to know as much fact as I possibly could, and at the same time, ring doorbells, knock and interrupt people's meals on Saturday afternoons, and ask them how they feel, and try to get the best input that I possibly could, so that way I'm the most well-rounded candidate for this position.
Thank you, Joe. Bailey Syrick, you'll also have 90 seconds to share with us what have you done to prepare for this position. Again, please include things such as speaking to city staff, citizen advisory boards, etc.
So I think that this is actually where me and Joe have our biggest differences, is I didn't spend my time initially meeting with board members and city staff. I went out and I talked to citizens. I doorbelled both elections. I doorbelled the primary and the general. So I spent a lot of time talking to citizens, hearing their issues they've had with the city, a more real life perspective than looking at numbers and data, talking to actual people that have had real problems with the city. Later on, I did end up meeting with board members and committees, but I made it my focus to talk to citizens first, business owners first, and then the city government last. And I think that is our biggest difference.
Thank you. Joe, if you'd like to respond, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. While I understand, obviously, the citizens have the loudest voice. When it comes down to decision making and helping them understand issues and how we got to where we are, you absolutely need to dig into the details. I believe we didn't do a good enough job in the past of outlaying and communicating in detail to the public on how we got to where we are, and I think that's critical moving forward to have that sense and be able to do that.
Thank you. This question will be fielded by Bailey. You'll have 90 seconds to answer. Which city department do you believe could be used as a positive model for the others, and why?
I think that the Public Works Department could really be used as a positive model. They are very understaffed and they work with a very limited budget, but they do, a tremendous amount of work, especially, doing the Sewer Basin 3 project and fixing, the roads that they feel need to be done first. I feel like they have such limited resources and they do so much with what they have, and I think that they are something to really look up to, and they are a department that we also need to help out the most moving forward because they do so much great work for our city.
Thank you. Joe, you have 90 seconds. Please tell us which city department you believe could be used as a positive model for others, and why.
Well, my heart will be with Public Works. I can honestly say that the police department has really shined in the city. And I believe that has to do with a lot of the direction and the leadership that Chief Moody brings to the table. But when I sat down with him and I talked about the issues that become issues with law enforcement, and you hear 10,000 calls for service a year and 3 patrol officers on duty, and the work that they're doing to bring crime rates down, the opportunities with applying for grants, and thinking a little bit outside of their box and working within the resources that they have. I heard some really great, potential solutions towards assisting with with a homeless liaison officer, working just within their own budgets and within their own capacity. I think it's just a great opportunity to see a city department work within some confines there. And again, wouldn't disagree with Public Works as well. They do have a lot on their plate, and they need as much help as they can get, just like the rest of our city services.
Thank you, Joe. Bailey, would you like to respond? You have 30 seconds.
I've also had a great experience with the police. Actually, last week I had an issue where someone was trying to scam me for money, and they told me they knew where I lived. So I called the police crying, and 2 of them showed up. So they have done a really great job with their limited amount of staff as well.
Thank you. Joe, we'll ask this question of you first. In 90 seconds, please tell us. As a member of the new council, you will vote for who serves as mayor. What are the characteristics that you would prioritize when voting for the mayor of Shelton? And aside from yourself, who of the current commission and the individuals running for council do you believe would make the best mayor?
Leadership qualities for sure, professionalism, somebody who's very much willing to work with both sides across all issues, with somebody with a level head, I think is going to be the person we want to have as our mayor. Right now, it's kind of a tough call. There's a lot of great candidates right now, but I would say putting me on the spot to make a decision other than myself. Yeah, I would have to go with probably Bob on that from what I've seen this evening.
Thank you, Joe. Bailey Sourick, you also have 90 seconds to share with us. What are the characteristics that you prioritize when voting for the mayor of Shelton? And aside from yourself, who of the current commissioner and individuals running for council do you believe would make the best?
This is something we actually talk about a lot in our house as well. But, you know, the person we would need to pick would need to have great networking abilities, great composure, a lot of experience with things. And Bob, I'm sorry, but I'd pick you too.
Thank you, Bailey. Joe, would you like to respond?
I would not.
Okay.
Now we'll move into the questions that the candidates have prepared for one another. The first question has been prepared by Bailey for Joe. Joe, you'll have 90 seconds to answer. Bailey's first question for you is, when it comes to protecting Shelton's children at schools, do you support having armed guards and armed teachers on campus?
I support having organized, trained, armed individuals at our school. I would prefer that that be law enforcement or some sort of component of law enforcement. I don't believe it is necessarily a duty of a teacher, an educator, to act as a security officer or a police officer or take on that responsibility outside of educating my child. However, I absolutely believe that security of our students is important, and that should be done through, like I said, some sort of organized, trained security officer at our schools, very similar to like a school resource officer that we see currently.
Thank you, Joe. Bailey, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond.
So I asked this. I was just at WSU, and we had a lot of lockdowns on campus with threats of school shooters, and it's hard for an officer to get to, you know, a certain place at the right time. And so I was just wondering if Joe was okay with teachers, not requiring teachers, but teachers who wanted the ability to protect themselves, being trained and being certified, if he would be okay with teachers protecting themselves and them students, because the officers do a lot, and it's not always easy for them to get to where they need to go.
Thank you. Joe, you have 30 seconds, if you'd like.
Yeah, I believe college campus is a little bit of a different scenario than Olympic Middle School or an elementary school. I'm not saying that any one of those are immune. I just believe that, again, in a school setting like this in Shelton School District, that should absolutely be a trained, designated individual who has worked through a program that is funded and organized through the school district and local law enforcement.
Thank you.
Bailey, this question Joe's prepared for you. You'll have 90 seconds to respond. Joe would like to know, in the course of your transactions with the city, such as obtaining permits, can you describe your interaction with city staff and how you've worked to resolve any conflict?
We actually just had a meeting with Craig Gregory, Bob Jean, sorry if I'm forgetting anybody, I'm on the spot, Jason Dose, regarding accessory dwelling units, and it was a great meeting. We had a good communication. We told them our issues, they told us their issues. It's, you know, communication is the biggest thing. Recently we've had many great meetings with them, and they've done a great job at customer service recently, and it's been a really good experience.
Thank you, Bailey. Joe, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond if you'd like to.
Nope.
All right then, thank you.
Joe, here's the next question Bailey has prepared for you. Early in the campaign, you identified as a Democrat and later seemed to separate yourself from that label. Do you still identify as a Democrat? Why or why not? You have 90 seconds.
Well, as we know, this is a nonpartisan race. Early on, yes, I did declare that I'm a Democrat, and I still am. I haven't changed sides. However, when it comes to decision making, it has nothing to do with my political affiliation. If you want to label me as a Democrat, go right ahead. But at the same time, I think I've demonstrated thus far that you can listen to all sides, you can balance decision making, and still ultimately end up with good decisions in the long run. I don't vote party lines. I vote for the best possible solutions, for the best possible for the scenarios that are laid out. I make the decisions based on data and based on the information that I have available to me. And again, not something that is a party line decision. And frankly, I'm not embarrassed to claim that I'm a Democrat. Again, being a military veteran, an employee of the state, I've traveled around, I've seen different communities, I know what it's like. I've had some pretty significant experience in my life, so I think ultimately getting to that point in my politics, in my decision making, I'm justified for where I'm at.
Thank you. Bailey, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond, please.
I just did want to clarify why I asked this question. It was brought to my attention that early on the campaign, you did label yourself as a Democrat. Then later on, someone said that they would never vote for a Democrat, and you didn't really answer your position. So I just wanted to see if you were flip-flopping on your views based on who you were talking to, or if you were firm in your stance. So that was really my main motivation for asking that.
Thank you. Joe, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I really don't have anything further to add other than, again, this is a nonpartisan race. I think we need to continue to keep our politics sort of out of this in a way and vote with the best possible, for the best possible candidates with the best possible solutions.
Thank you. Bailey, you'll have 90 seconds to answer the next question that Joe prepared for you. Can you better describe the role you play in your business and how that translates to the management of the city's operations?
Can I clarify the first choice dirt movers? Is that what you meant, Joe? The
Yes.
Shelton business? Yeah, currently it's a newer business, so we're a little rough right now, but we're starting out. I'm learning how to do bids right now. Right now I do all the taxes, I do all the, QuickBooks, I pay payroll, I do the DNR taxes, Social Security, but I'm also learning how to deal with inefficiencies in the permitting system. Right now, actually, we are talking to a lady who we've been on a job for, and she is having issues with permitting because the permitting people are out for 3 weeks, and now they're being told they can't open for 6 weeks, but they have a license, and so it's a big time constraint. So right now I'm really learning how we can get over those inefficiencies and how important it is for these people to open at a certain time. I mean, it doesn't only push back her business, it pushes back the roofer, the cement pourer, it pushes back so many other businesses in Shelton, and it's important that we learn how to combat these inefficiencies in the permitting.
Joe, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to respond.
Yes. So budgeting and finance in the public sector is much different than a small business or personal checkbook. How would you work to resolve shortfalls while still maintaining city services mandated by law? Keeping cops on the street, treating sewage, whatever it may be. There are potentials that the city may run into budget shortfalls in the future. So how would you deal with that?
That's certainly a case-by-case thing. First of all, I think that the budget is very broad and we don't understand it. I don't think that the commissioners who voted on it understand it either. My first thing will be to understand where the money in the budget is going specifically so we can know how to make decisions like that in the future.
Thank you, Bailey. Joe, the last question Bailey has prepared for you is, what specific firsthand experience have you had with obtaining permits at the City of Shelton? You have 90 seconds.
The first-hand experience I have obtaining permits with the city would be a fence permit. I think when I first moved into the house that I live in now, it was slightly chaotic. I was back and forth a few times trying to get our permit squared away, but it was that was it. That was my experience with the permitting process.
Thank you. Bailey, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond.
I'm good.
Okay.
Bailey, the last question that Joe has for you is, one of the top concerns of our community is the condition of our roads. Can you please explain how the Transportation Benefit District works and whether or not you agree with it? You have 90 seconds for your answer.
I did watch your video on Facebook about the transportation benefit district. I also disagreed with your video. I don't think that our taxes have been meaningfully used. I had a flat tire last week. My family drove to Pullman, this weekend. The roads are awful. I think we can all agree with that. And I don't think that taking more taxes from us to, deal with these problems is working. We still don't have good roads, and that's an issue that everybody agrees on. And so that, I think we need to find other ways to deal with those sorts of issues.
Thank you. Joe, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond.
All I'm going to say is transportation infrastructure is extremely expensive. The Transportation Benefit District is an innovative way to spread out the cost of not just Shelton taxpayers, but people who come to our city and spend money here, and people who may drive through here. As we know, gas tax in Washington State is also extremely expensive, but of that 49 cents gas tax, local jurisdictions are only getting about 11 cents of that. Frankly put, we're not getting enough funding to maintain our roadway infrastructure.
Bailey, 30 seconds? No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks to both of you for fielding these questions from the chamber, the audience, and from one another. And we'll begin now with closing statements. You'll each receive 60 seconds. As Joe began with his opening statement, we'll hear first from Bailey Cyrick. Bailey.
I'm running for seat 6 because I'm a concerned citizen who has seen firsthand the inefficiencies we have as a city, but I've also seen the potential we have as well. I didn't plan to run, and I didn't spend time before this marketing myself in preparation for my campaign. I just threw myself in the ring because I knew I could help create real change in the city. This campaign has been such a great experience, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I've been blessed to have many opportunities to speak with citizens, business owners, our local commissioners, county commissioners, state representatives, and state senators, and hear their ideas and goals for the city as well. I promise, as an elected official, I will do whatever it takes to maintain my integrity by keeping the citizens' best interests at heart. I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite Ronald Reagan quotes. If we ever forget that we are one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. Let's work together to create real change. Vote Bailey Cyrick, seat 6.
Thank you, Bailey. And we'll finish things up with Joe Schmidt. Joe?
Thanks. The past couple of months have been anything short of a whirlwind, but I truly see positive change on the horizon. I see a city where families and businesses are growing, where people have a sense of ownership, which will stem from a new level of engagement never before seen in Shelton. Where safety and prosperity are building a stronger community, a community that can sustain the tests of time, the economic booms and busts, and still come out on top. I see a high level of focus and enhanced organization, a place where people want to build, businesses want to expand, and those outside look at as a model. As we move forward, it is important to remember that we have a choice. We have the ability to shape our future. We have the ability to elect the right people to represent us. I'm not running to serve my own purposes or meet my own agenda. I'm not a single issue candidate. I am running because I want to serve the people of Shelton. I have the ability to get the right people to the table to work on all of Shelton's issues. My name is Joe Schmidt. I have a clear vision for our future, and I hope to be your choice for position 6.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate both of you for sharing your views and your platform with us this evening. Thank you again. We'll now have a few minutes to break to prepare for the stage for Marilyn Vogler and Deidre Peterson, the candidates for City Council Seat 5.
I broke your pen, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, don't thank me.
to sit down, but thank you for saying something.
I teased Bob, he started things.
Start in about a minute. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back. We welcome Marilyn Vogler and Deidre Peterson to share their platforms with us. Marilyn, you'll have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
I thought we got 2 minutes.
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Okay, I'll be quick. I'm Marilyn Vogler. I chose to make Shelton my home when I retired in 2010. I immediately got involved in the community because that's what I do. I've served on Park Rec Advisory Commission, the Library Advisory Board, the Poverty Advisory Team. I'll participate in the Housing Coalition. I was part of the Lewis Mason Thurston Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board, and within that with the State Council on Aging. I participated in a grant project the State Council was doing on the guardianship system for vulnerable adults. I'm currently on the County Planning Advisory Commission and the City Civil Service Commission, so I have a breadth of experience with city issues that merges with how the city and the county work together. We were asked to address what the role of the council person would be. Councilors will represent the people of Shelton. Even with 7 of us, contact with our 10,000 residents will be spread pretty thin. I know the power of effective citizen advisory committees because of the way I've worked. We managed to bring a off-leash dog park to Shelton.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. For those of you who haven't met me yet this election, my name is Deidre Peterson. I'm a 4th-generation Sheltonian and a proud Shelton High Climber graduate. I moved away from here to earn my business degree, had several jobs, and decided to come home because this is the place I love. This is the place that I knew I could put my skills and my education to use to make my community better. Someone asked me shortly before the primary, did you always want to be in public office? And I laughed and responded, no, never. I've always been a behind-the-scenes person, but with this election, I really felt compelled to get involved. The commission has had a really strong move now to the council. It's going to take really strong leaders to be part of that process. I hope that I can be a public servant. I hope that I can be someone who is the voice of our citizens, who relies on integrity and professionalism and accountability on every issue. And I think that if we approach things from that avenue, it's hard to get too far off track. So I really look forward to opportunities to continue to work in this community that I love, bring folks to the table, be collaborative, and be part of the solutions for the next generation of what's going to be a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Deidre.
We'll start out with the questions that we prepared for you. For this, we'll begin with Deidre. After that, Marilyn will answer, and after Marilyn's answer, Deidre will have the opportunity to respond. So, Deidre, in 90 seconds, please share with us. Livability indexes often place us at a lower ranking than our neighboring communities. Does the city government have a role to play in improving these rankings? Why or why not?
I would say absolutely. Quality of life and livability is something that impacts us on a daily basis, and the City Council should be a leader in creating those solutions. I don't know that any one of us could possibly bring every solution to the table, but by being willing to listen and bring in experts and work with the groups that have a lot to to do in this community, I think we can stretch ourselves so much further. There's a lot of really wonderful opportunities. So I would see the City Council as a convener, as someone who can look at the vision for our city and help bring people together to make that happen.
Thank you. Deidre, Marilyn, you also have 90 seconds to share with us. Livability indexes often place us at a lower ranking than our neighboring communities. Does the city government have a role to play in improving these rankings, and why or why not?
I think to the extent that the City Council governs Shelton, certainly it has a role to play in how we're seen as livable. I know there are lots of discussions on Facebook. Many of them are negative, but our participation in social media as both representatives of the city and as citizens is a tremendous opportunity to share the beauty of the city, the beauty of the area we live in, the events that are going on. That would be something we could do as individual council members. As far as the City Council as a whole goes, certainly we work with the Chamber, we work with other entities to put forward the beauty and just the relative wonderful place this is to live. There are lots of opportunities to show that we are a good place. Statistics on crime show that for the most part, property crime is much more prevalent than violent crime. Those statistics have been getting better. We have events in the area, Oyster Fest, the Forest Festival, that need to be talked about, need to be promoted by council people and individual council members.
Thank you. Deidre, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
This question will be fielded by Marilyn, and you'll have 90 seconds to answer. If the city had $1 million to enact a program, provide a service, or acquire an asset, what would be your first priority and why?
$1 million might not go very far, but I think everyone agrees that one of the issues the city faces is people who live without shelter, the homeless population in town. There's a project at hand that will create 30 tiny homes for homeless veterans. But the fact that we have people who are unsheltered, that have no legal place to be most of the time, has an impact on what people think of our livability. It has an impact on our local merchants. It has an impact on the environment because, you know, if you don't have a place to live, you don't have a place to do a lot of things that pollute the environment. And so I would begin with affordable housing for the chronically homeless because I think that would spread the benefit across most populations, most aspects of city life.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, in 90 seconds, please tell us if the city had $1 million to enact a program, provide a service, or acquire an asset, what would be your first priority and why?
I would like to see the city take a more open-ended approach to that, and rather than pick a particular issue, I would like to see the city create some sort of a program where folks could apply for matching dollars to leverage efforts that are already underway. We have a lot of really wonderful nonprofits, we have fantastic programs, and we have specific public works projects. We have specific social issues that need to be addressed. And if the city had a fund that was dedicated to leveraging those dollars to make those solutions come to reality, I think that is something that would be an absolute win for the city on all sides.
Thank you, Deidre. Marilyn, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I would simply say if we combine the two ideas, it would be a wonderful prospect for improvement in the city.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, we'll ask this question of you first in 90 seconds. Please share with us. What is your proudest accomplishment that has directly benefited Shelton and its residents?
As trite as it may sound for me, being elected to the leadership of my local Kiwanis Club was really transformative for me. As I mentioned, I'm a high climber graduate, but that also meant I was a Key Clubber. And Key Club taught us leadership, it taught us public service, and the importance of giving back to the community. And so when I moved back here, the first thing that I did was go to the Kiwanis Club that had sponsored my Key Club in high school and said, I want to get involved. And to this day, they may regret the fact that they did install me, and a short time later accepted me as a board member. Through that group, I've been able to be a part of city beautification efforts, highway cleanup, serving food at St. David's, a number of activities, Forest Festival, and it's just one way that I've been able to immerse myself in the community outside of my job at the chamber, outside of my family, and for me it really is a great way to kind of get that energy out into the community in a really positive way.
Thank you. Marilyn, you also have 90 seconds to share with us what is your proudest accomplishment that has directly benefited Shelton and its residents?
I think my experience with the Park and Recreation Advisory Board that I joined very shortly after I moved here has been positive in a lot of ways. In the first place, we were really proactive. We communicated with the community. When community groups came to us and said, we want a trail, we worked with them, we facilitated. A community group came to us and said, we need an off-leash dog park. We had an excellent staff contact in Mark Ziegler. We had great cooperation from the City Council, City Commission in listening to us and working with Mark to find property for the dog park. And I think this experience really showed me how people in Shelton can work together toward positive outcome, but it also showed me how important it is that people work with staff and work with city government to accomplish an end that people are interested in seeing. And so this was, I guess, the kind of model I would like to see in a council with advisory committees, with citizens who are excited about project, with staff who are able to assist and facilitate, and with then a council that supports these efforts.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now we move into the questions that the candidates have prepared for one another. The first question has been prepared by Marilyn for Deidre. Deidre, you'll have 90 seconds to answer. Marilyn's first question of you is, it has been said that there's a real need for $300 to $500 a month rentals in Shelton. How do you see the city addressing the lack of housing that is affordable for those with low and very low income?
Well, I would say that's one prong that needs to be addressed. I think that overall housing in Shelton at all levels needs to be something that we're looking at, and I think that the city's role in that starts at zoning. Do we have properties available for multifamily housing? Do we have low income availability? Do we have senior housing availability? Do we have housing availability for folks who are moving here for jobs and need somewhere to go? And I think that once we start to identify the folks that are moving into our area and those who are already here who have a need for housing, we as the City Council have an opportunity to not only zone appropriately, but to work with developers to encourage growth that fits those groups.
Thank you. Marilyn, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond.
I think, Deidre, you're really correct that we need to look at zoning issues. We need to look at multifamily housing. I would be especially interested in how the city might actively participate in cooperating, in partnering as a city council.
Thank you. Deidre, would you like to respond?
Well, I think that the City Council obviously needs to be setting those policies, but I think there also needs to be a really concerted effort and conversation with the county and how we look at growth into the UGA, because decisions that we're making at the City Council level, decisions that the county is making at the commission level affect one another, and we have to be really aware of that moving forward and be willing to work together to find the right solutions.
Thank you.
Marilyn, this question Deidre has prepared for you. You'll have 90 seconds to respond. Deidre would like to know, the first point of your platform is to build and maintain a full range of housing stock, ensuring safe and affordable housing for everyone. What specific plans do you propose, and how would that be funded?
Well, we've kind of visited part of this already. I think we need to look very carefully at zoning regulations, at design standards, at the requirements we have in place regarding setbacks, regarding how many multifamily housing units we allow in the city. The other point is that the city owns a number of pieces of property around town, and one of the things that other areas have done is lease city or county government-owned property to persons willing to build for low or very low income housing. I think that could be done. I'm especially interested in the prospect of tiny and very small homes. The average size home back in 1950 was 900 plus square feet. It's well above that now. But we need to get past the notion that people have to have huge homes and a bathroom for every teenage child, and that you have only one house on a large piece of city property. So it's looking at what we're doing that restricts housing. What is it about building codes? We need to look at the international existing building code for remodeling, repairing, keeping up older existing homes.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, did you want to clarify?
Just one point that Marilyn made is discussing as we're looking at city-owned property, and I would like to know your thoughts, Marilyn, on how the city can balance being a partner in creating housing, but also protecting city assets and looking at long-term growth for city structures.
I'm thinking, I guess, in particular about small pieces of property where a very small or tiny home or two tiny homes might be put. Properties that could not be built with a standard size home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deidre, here's the next question Marilyn has prepared for you. A number of small businesses have opened and closed their doors in the span of 3 or 4 years. Given local spending patterns, such as increased online shopping, what specific things would you do to support local retailers? You have 90 seconds to answer.
Thank you. I would like to say first and foremost, I'm thrilled to see that the city is prioritizing economic development. Hiring Andy Arnaz has been a great move by the city. This is something that we have to take a serious look at. In my position at the chamber, I talk with people on a daily basis that are opening a business or thinking about opening a business or in the midst of trying to make their business work. And what we find time and again are a number of issues. It's education and opportunity for those business members. So I think that partnering with groups like Enterprise for Equity, the Chamber of Commerce, economic development is one part of that answer. But I also think that the city has to be really mindful of making doing business in Shelton something that we can do and that people want to do. There certainly is a retail gap. More and more folks are shopping online, or if they're going to Olympia because there's something they can't find in town, they finish their shopping list while we're there. So I think we need to identify opportunities to fill that retail gap. And I think that the economic development plan that the consultants are developing currently might be a first step in a very engrossed process to determine what some of those might be.
Thank you. Marilyn, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond if you'd like.
I had an opportunity to talk with the team or the person in charge of the economic development plan and learned they're not really looking at retail. At the same time the city took on a contract with them, they agreed with the retail coach, I think it's called, who will be doing a serious look at how our retail is managed. I'm hoping these two people, these two groups can really come together. At the same time, Bob Jean, who's the interim, suggested we need a vigorous buy local campaign, and I'd like to know what that looks like.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, you have 30 seconds.
I think that the Retail Coach and Economic Development is looking at some of the big picture and maybe finding some places that we haven't identified yet, fits that have worked well in other communities that might translate well here. But Shelton is very much its own place. We're our own community, and I think relying on the expertise of those we have here is something that we need to be mindful of. And I think that the retail is one portion of that, but I'd like to see us just be a little bit more creative and a little bit more thoughtful moving forward.
Thank you.
Marilyn, the next question that Deidre has prepared for you is, you've indicated that the city should rely more heavily on citizen advisory committees. How do you reconcile that several have vacancies and others are dormant for lack of staff time? You have 90 seconds for your answer.
I recognize this is an issue. It was an issue on Parks and Recreation, and what we did as a group was to realize that many of our park facilities are also used by people in the county. And so we asked the commission to change the ordinance to allow membership of county residents. At the same time, I've heard a lot of people come to the commission and say, I really wish I could vote in Shelton because you all make a lot of decisions that impact me. And so what I have proposed is that the advisory commissions we have, committees we establish, purposefully include places on those committees for county residents. I think this would give people who live in the county who feel impacted by city decisions not a vote, but a place to have their ideas heard, to be seriously considered, and to have those ideas discussed by people who live in the city, by city staff, in a way that would increase the sense that we are not, as Shelton, an isolated pocket in the midst of Mason County, but that we're an integral part of the county, and that we rely on county residents as well as city residents to support our businesses, to make the town livable.
Thank you, Marilyn. Deidre, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond if you'd like to.
Thank you. One of the things that I've continued to see with citizen advisory groups, and this is at the city, at the county, and at organizations along the way, is that we're finding less and less people bearing the brunt of more and more work, and I think that's a factor of a number of things. I think it's people feeling that their time is valued. I think it's making committee meetings and times such that people can participate meaningfully in the process. And I would prefer to see that we really try to reach out to larger groups of people on specific projects, similarly to what the city did with the Alder Street Connection Project, presenting to the city and allowing them to have feedback in the process.
Marilyn, you have 30 more seconds to address it.
I guess simply my experience with a number of advisory committees has shown me that they depend on, the success depends on good staff support, good participation, and if you can show that you have succeeded, if you can provide an off-leash dog park, if you can get the community involved in building the Teresa Johnson Trail, then you will have people eager to serve because they see their input is valued and achieves results.
Thank you. Deidre, the last question Marilyn has prepared for you is, there have been several recent mishaps at the city, such as Angleside Pump Station, a finance director in court for embezzlement, and grant projects initiated with incomplete funding. How should the council hold a city manager accountable for staff who report to him or her? You have 90 seconds to answer.
I think those are all really incredible issues that we're facing, and I think it's created an atmosphere of distrust and a lack of credibility. For me, I think that the council's role is to, first and foremost, set a very clear vision so that the city manager understands where they're meant to go, where the city council intends for them to focus their time and energies, and then allow them to empower their staff to make those things happen. I would say that I would hope we would find a city manager that has not only the experience that we need, but who is able to manage his people in such a way to protect the city's interests, to work on behalf of the citizens on a daily basis, and that it is the council's job to continue that conversation every step of the way so that the city manager knows what is expected, and if those expectations are not met, that the city council is bringing them back in and revisiting that. It's not an easy conversation to have, but it's something that we must be willing to do if we're going to have any sort of a positive movement.
Thank you. Marilyn, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond if you'd like.
I really agree, Deidre, particularly with the fact these are difficult conversations to have. I guess, in part, I've supported strongly the shift to council because I think having the opportunity to talk with other council members, which of course our commissioners haven't, I think we as a council, or whoever's on the council, will have better opportunity for oversight of projects and better chance to talk with the manager about holding projects accountable.
Thank you. Deidre, you have 30 seconds if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn, the last question that Deidre has for you is, the national opioid epidemic and drug issues continue to be a social and safety concern for many communities, including Shelton. What specific plans would you encourage to be implemented?
I participated in a community forum on opioids, I think, a couple of years ago. I was ready to see some definitive answers about what we were going to do. I was kind of disappointed that one of the top things people supported was education, because I thought, well, gee, if educating people did any good, we would all be not skinny, but a healthy weight, and we would exercise 4 or 5 times a week, and we would not eat a lot of junk food. Education is only part of it. One of the things that was suggested, and we were talked to by a number of people, but the strong message that came across is addiction is a disease. It's like diabetes. Opioid addiction can be or remission can be maintained, but the disease cannot be cured because of actual physical changes the drugs make in the body and brain. I would like to see us go into an extensive program of support for a disease. For opioids, there have been options like a Suboxone clinic, methadone maintenance, needle exchanges, safe shoot-up places, certainly abstinence programs supported, faith groups do this. What we were impressed with then was that there is not one solution that fits every person in need of help.
Thank you. Deidre, you have 30 seconds to clarify or respond.
Sure. As we've touched on, this is an absolutely important issue, especially in our community, and I would just like to say that I think that looking at this as a multi-pronged, a multifaceted issue, something that we have to be willing to do. I think that one of the biggest things that we can do as a city council is to have conversations with the local hospital district, law enforcement, health professionals, and the county services so that we are supporting one another in efforts to combat this issue.
Thank you. Marilyn, would you like to respond again?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. Well, thank you to both of you for fielding these questions from the chamber, the audience, and from one another. We'll begin now with closing statements, and you'll each have 60 seconds. As Deidre began with her opening statement, we'll hear first from Marilyn Vogler.
I appreciate your being here. I appreciate your interest in the campaign. I can't promise if I'm elected to do any specific things. I can promise only that I will educate myself, that I will advocate for things I believe in, that I will listen to people who talk to me, and who I have conversations with that I may seek out. I think we need to remember that each counselor is one of 7, that reaching any kind of meaningful decisions will require discussion, probably argument, consensus, or compromise, but we will work as a group. The other thing we have to remember is that the council will be stepping into projects and issues that are already underway. It's not as if a new council will begin afresh, and we have to be prepared to move smoothly into what is already being done.
Thank you, Marilyn. Tonight we'll end things with Deidre Peterson.
Thank you everyone for being here this evening, and thank you to everyone who will end up watching this online as well. The ballots drop tomorrow, and I would just take this time to encourage all of you who are here, all of those of you who are watching this, to encourage your friends and family to learn about the candidates, to learn about the issues, and to cast your ballot. With a city of 10,000, we had only a little over 1,100 people participate in the primary. This is a real opportunity for you to have your voice heard and have candidates that you feel represent you and that will serve you well for these coming terms. So I would just like to ask you to please consider me. I love this place. I can only promise you that I will study the issues. I will work incredibly hard. I will do my best to represent the citizens and to do so in a thoughtful manner. Just please consider me for your seat 5 vote, and please cast your ballots. Thank you.
Thank you, Deidre.
Thank you, Deidre. We appreciate both of you sharing your views and your platform with us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank each of you for joining us tonight, both in person and online. We appreciate the candidates for joining us and sharing their platform. And my thanks again to the Chamber's Government Relations team, the Chamber Board of Trustees, my co-host John Lester, and to MasonWebTV and Hood Canal Communications for live streaming tonight's event. Thank you and have a safe drive home.